Today is Monday, July 27th, 2020. This meeting is now in session and it is being recorded.
Good afternoon. This is Dr. Carol Mountain. Welcome to the Education and Practice Committee meeting of the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. I'm the committee chair. I would like to call this meeting to order at 2:07 p.m. Before we do a roll call, I will provide detailed information on how this meeting works. This meeting will be held via teleconference and webcast on Monday, July 27, 2020. All committee members are attending telephonically. I will ask the committee members and their staff to mute their telephones to eliminate background noise, and when they are ready to speak, they can unmute their telephone. I will take a roll call of each committee member for comments on each agenda item and for votes. Please identify yourself by name each time you speak so our audience knows who's speaking. This meeting is audio only and the visual available is the webcast information screen. We can take public comment on agenda items, and if you wish to provide public comment, email your comments to bvnptboard@dca.ca.gov. Please include the agenda item number so your comment is read at the appropriate time. Please direct your questions or comment to a specific person. If you are providing public comment, your name is not necessary, and please indicate how you would like us to identify you. There will be a pause after each agenda item to allow time for email comments to arrive. I will ask board staff if they receive any comments and ask the board staff to read the comments. I will either answer the questions or refer to the committee members by doing a roll call. For anyone who does speak, that person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those schools that are up for review will be able to speak for 5 minutes. We will be doing timing to keep the meeting moving as well as possible. I will now do a roll call to establish quorum. I will ask each committee member to respond here after I say their name. Paula Amazola D. Herrera.
Present.
Donna Norton. Donna Norton.
Present.
Cheryl Turner.
Here.
Based on the roll call, we established a quorum. Our next agenda item is introduction. Welcome to stakeholders of the meeting. We would like to welcome the stakeholders to the meeting, and based on our teleconference situation, please know that we appreciate your time and presence with us today. Agenda item 4 is an update on the governor's executive orders and state of emergency. Ms. Yamaguchi, would you please give us an update?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Elaine Yamaguchi, the executive officer. And actually, before I mentioned the governor's executive order status, I did want to update the committee members and the chair that we actually do have the ability for folks to provide direct comment into the chat box, so they should be able to ask for attention, and the moderator should be able to call upon them for their direct comment. But now at this point, the governor has not changed, renewed, or canceled any of the executive orders that we've been operating under, and we do still operate under the state of emergency. All conversations that we've had, that the director of DCA and the agency secretary and her staff have provided us indicate to us that that's not going to change anytime soon. I think for the purposes of this committee, what we are most critically interested in watching, of course, would be our exemptions and our ability to function via WebEx or Teams or one of the other platforms to hold meetings via teleconference or on the line, and not be able to be physically present and open for audiences. And that would be my report on that.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. I will do a roll call of our committee members for any questions. Ms. Amazola de Herrera, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Not at this point. Thank you.
Ms. Norton, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Not at this point, thank you.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
No, not at this time.
I see no question or answers in the comments or questions section. Board staff, have there been any further comments or questions?
No, there have not.
Moving on. Number 5, agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on ongoing admissions. Ms. Yamaguchi, will you update us on this, please?
Thank you so much. As the committee knows, we have a number of schools, probably somewhere like 2/3 of our total schools, who are on an ongoing admissions, a continued approval basis, which is a good thing ordinarily. This has created a little bit of a complication during the COVID pandemic. And I wouldn't say problem, I wouldn't say concern, but the issue that we have with the ongoing admissions is that we have made a couple of guidelines and recommendations out to the schools with regard to their placement of new classes. I think the committee would agree with us that the most important factor to consider right now is the safety of the staff and the students, and then the eventual safety of all the patients that these new nurses would be taking care of. So we're concerned a bit about ensuring that the students that are admitted have all the resources that they would need to adequately go through the programs. Now, I want to make sure that you know that we don't think that there's a vast amount of problems with that, but over the past several months, there have been a number of we'll call them hiccups and interruptions in the abilities for schools to place their students in clinical placements. And this does, of course, create a log jam, if you will, for the students to be able to proceed in their programs. So one of the things that we've asked of the programs is to make sure that they are providing their assigned NECs with the most up-to-date information before they admit a new class on specifically those resources that they have available, their confirmed clinical sites, their faculty, their facilities. So at this point in time, we're asking all the schools to make sure that they provide that. We're asking the NECs, and this is a good amount of new workload for them, to make sure that they're analyzing and following up. They're doing some random cross-checking on, if there's a facility, for example, that a number of schools have listed as their clinical sites, that they really do have all the ability to have and accommodate all of those students. So this has been going on quite actively for the past few weeks. Most of the schools have been very, very cooperative. What we've asked, of course, is really nothing that's above and beyond what the schools are already tracking for their own files and for their own management. But what we are asking that is different is that they provide the board and the NECs with that information before they admit a new class. And at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Good afternoon. This is the moderator. If anybody in the audience has an attendee, has any questions, please use the raise hand feature located at the bottom right of your screen. At this time, I do not see any raised hands for any comments.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi, for your update. I would like to ask a roll call of our committee members for any questions. Ms. Amazola de Herrera, do you have any questions?
My question is, and I'm new to this committee, and so this is just asking if, so for my background information, but also as we move forward and making decisions, I would like to know this process. If a school changes their assignment, their clinical assignment, is there a report, like for example, due to the pandemic, Clinic X had to close, and this is this reported to us, or is it documented anywhere so that we are informed of the how big this problem is?
May I answer that, Madam Chair?
Please.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And I think actually that's kind of the crux of the whole matter. Yes, as a matter of fact, this is exactly what we're driving at when we ask the schools to make sure that they're keeping us updated on the resources they have available. That does include all of their clinical sites and placements. And if something does change, because you're right, everything is changing, with a day's notice or less. That way the NEC is aware of what's going on and how the school is compensating, what they're looking for to provide in lieu of that facility, for example. And this is also where we've been having a lot of discussions on alternate means of providing experience. So yes, that's exactly the issue.
Thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Norton, do you have any questions?
So I'm sorry, before we move on, I just want to clarify, this is Paula again. So we currently do ask each school to submit that, but we don't know if they're doing it. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we do ask them to do so. And at this point, they are responding. And if they're not responding, that communication goes up the chain a bit. That Marie would talk to either the program director or the facilities or both. But yes, we're hearing the responses.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Norton, do you have any questions or comments?
I just have a clarifying question, because I think what I heard in the beginning was that this is an ongoing issue for schools that are already approved. Schools that were approved, they didn't have to ask the board before starting new classes, nor did they have to keep us informed of things. So because of the situation that we're in now, we are asking even approved schools to inform the board, not ask the board, but inform the board if they're starting new classes. And part of that information is to include, we have X number of sites, or we've had to change our curriculum on such and such, because they're already tracking that for their own purposes, correct?
That's correct. We have all the schools on continued approval. We have their enrollment patterns, so we do know when about they would be looking to admit a class. So what we are asking them to do is, in advance of that admission, to basically re-verify that everything is still set up, that they do have the resources to ability to move that class along.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions, discussion, or comments?
Yes, I appreciate that last clarification. So you're saying, is that voluntary or mandatory that you're requesting them to inform you?
it is mandatory for the schools to have this information, to make sure that it is documented and in their files. What is not, strictly speaking, mandatory at this time is to provide it case by case, class by class to the board and to the NECs. What we are asking them to do during this pandemic is to make sure that they are providing that much more immediately every time there's a new class starting. Just again, to make sure that those classes have everything they need to be able to move and learn and go through the program.
Okay. But it's still voluntary.
Technically, it is voluntary.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Okay, thank you to everyone for your questions and Ms. Yamaguchi for your responses. We'll move on to item number 6. That would be agenda item number 6, update, discussion, and possible action on use of simulation for clinical experience proposed by Unitech College. Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As the committee members will see in their packet, we've had these ongoing discussions with the Unitech system, and that is, I believe, 8 or 9 separate campuses. As you know, there have been problems and hiccups and interruptions in schools' abilities to place their students for clinical experience, and a lot of the programs have relied a little bit more on the use of simulation, on virtual experience, and on other ways to provide the students with some experience. Some, for example, like role playing with their fellow students, use of mannequins in the skills labs, and work like that, a lot of which is very, very valuable. So the Unitech campus, actually the system, asked us, and I hope you had a chance to look at their whole proposal and our response to it. Essentially, they've looked at a way to sort of rearrange their ability to provide experience for their students, some of which, of course, is a concern, which is, but the nature of their request is such an interesting and challenging concept, and because every other campus has been wrestling with their ability to find the placements, and I think just by way of background refresher, we have asked campuses, we have asked the programs to provide their students with no more than 50% of their total experience in simulations. We want 50% or more to be real hands-on experience with patients. This has become increasingly difficult, especially in certain regions of the state. And we do quite understand the need to find some ways to work around the scarcity of the clinical sites. But a couple of things have happened in the interim, in the past month or so. One being the fact that the Department of Public Health did issue an all facilities letter that said that essentially nursing students should be considered essential, and that barring anything that the county health officer decreed, those students should be allowed to be in the facilities and providing and learning. The other thing, of course, is that we're experiencing, I think, kind of uneven reopenings of the state. So while some regions are still very, very badly impacted, some are not, and are able to find their ways back into some facilities for placements. So the Unitech proposal is very interesting and pretty revolutionary. And we didn't want to just make a decree at the staff level. We felt it was much more appropriate for this committee and then the full board to talk about, because quite honestly, when we make it, when BVNPT makes a final recommendation on this proposal, it will, of course, impact every other school as well, because when we set a policy for one program, in fairness, it's got to be accessible to everybody else. Pardon me. So the crux of the Unitech proposal would be to, pardon me, it's allergies, I promise. The crux of the Unitech proposal is to see that the entire first term, the fundamentals, is the experience is housed in skills lab and simulation. And as I said, there's a great deal of value in these, but there's not any time allotted for actual patient care, hands-on care. The NECs, and I find that troubling. The proposal itself says that they would work to make up for that time in terms 2 and 3, but they didn't really provide a greatly detailed scheme or time frame or real plan, outlined plan of what those hours, how that would be made up. At this point in time, we don't feel that this is a really viable plan to move on. But as I said, I wanted to make sure that the committee and the board had the chance to talk. And I do know that the Unitech president is online, so I would be happy to yield some time to them if the committee is willing.
Thank you for that update, Ms. Yamaguchi. I'm wondering if any of the board members would like to ask further questions of Ms. Yamaguchi or even of the Unitech president. That Ms. Amazola D. Herrera, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
I'm in the document, Unitech final proposal, and am I understanding correctly that term 1 would be all laboratory, and then the rest of the terms will include clinical? Is that?
If I may, I'm going to defer to Marie Cordero, our SNEC, for this.
Hi, this is Marie. Good morning, good afternoon. No, what they're essentially proposing is to have virtually no clinical patient care hours in the proposal.
So as you know, the programs have all taken their didactics online completely, and for their clinical experience, the hands-on experience, some have been able to go into clinical placements. Some have had simulation. Some have had skills lab where they work on mannequins or on each other as practice, and a variety of other skills building. But this proposal does not include any actual hands-on patient experience for that fundamentals term.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi and Ms. Cordera. Ms. Norton, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Yes, I do. So just a few. The first thing that I would say is that this is a huge topic, and there's many, many facets to this topic. So I don't know that we actually have enough time to make a determination here. But regarding the, did I just hear correctly that, because I thought I heard the question asked whether it was just term 1 that had no actual patient interaction, and then I thought I heard the response was that their proposal is none for any of the terms. But I think that when I read their proposal, it looked like in terms 2 and 3 that there would be opportunity for them to interact with the patient. So
that's correct. If I may.
Thing. Okay. All right. The second thing is I'm wondering. I also read the letter that came attached to this whole big packet regarding whether or not this board was going to consider the fact of the way that the BRN did with use of, and I think if I looked at the BRNs correctly, theirs is 100% simulation and skills in their foundational, which seems to be the equivalent of what Unitech is talking about here. The second question that I would have for Unitech, I guess, if they come on, is there's different levels of simulators that are out there. Some of them can simulate, albeit a program simulation, pretty on par with what a patient would present. So it would be interesting to see what their level of simulators are, because I think that as we move forward, and especially it doesn't feel like this COVID crisis is going to go away anytime soon, and it is going to impact our ability to have to turn these, to be able to turn these nurses up. So I think we do have to find a way where they can get the skills that they need. And then in regard to being essential, I know students are essential, but I think that the crux that we find ourselves in is in the current ability of these hospitals and such to have proper personal protective equipment, and there's sometimes maybe a reluctance to want to have students because as the students come in, they use up the PPE. So has a lot of questions that I had and more of a statement, I guess, over this overarching concern here. I did read, I'm both leery and impressed by their presentation here about their proposed changes. I just think it warrants a lot more time than what we have allotted here.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Ms. Turner, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Yes, I thought it was very interesting reading their proposal, and I think that there is a place for us to consider developing the use of telehealth and more simulations, but that still has to be balanced with some sort of patient contact directly. And so maybe we could focus at some point on working to develop a policy about how telehealth can be used. And since nursing students are essential, it seems like there should be a place for them and a need for them. It's just, as Donna said, the need for the personal protection equipment, but also the need for oversight by someone when most staff, medical staff, are overworked, under the circumstances. So.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. I would like to respond to a couple of things. One is there is currently some telehealth modules are being developed for nursing schools and nursing students on a statewide level. And hopefully they'll be done before the start of the semester in August. That's the goal. And I know that they are currently underway and that they are being developed so that there can be some standardization of telehealth. I also would like to go back and address the idea that the BRN is doing 100% simulation. And I just wanted on record that when a student comes into an RN program, they've had anywhere from 2 to 4 semesters of prerequisites. And students coming into an LVN program can come straight in and do their prerequisites as they are doing their LVN program. So for these students, these LVN students coming in, it is a short timeline and 3 semesters, and one of those completely dedicated to simulation causes me some concern as a long-term educator. And I agree that we need more discussion about this and really projecting out what this would mean to students coming in all sorts of programs. And I'd like to know if there's any further questions from the audience, or if the Unitech president would like to make a statement.
Good afternoon. This is the moderator. I do have 2 questions in the audience. I will unmute their microphones one by one. The first is Abdel Yosef.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam
Sir?
Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I just wanted to give you a gentle reminder that you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. At the 30-second mark, I will give you a gentle reminder, okay? At which time, at the 3 minutes it's up, I will mute your microphone.
I appreciate that. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi, for allowing us to present our proposal. And our proposal is two parts. The part about term one being done completely in a skills lab, hands-on, with a role play, with the mannequins, and standard actors and students. And the second part about telehealth and the use of telehealth in the advanced med-surg. In regard to part one and to Ms. Norton point, this is based on the BRN regulations, the DCA waiver actually that came out and was cited by Ms. Yamaguchi in her letters. It was based on the BRN regulations, and the BRN regulations allows term one to be done completely in a skills lab. And our team believes that we can actually achieve the clinical objectives, and we are willing to go in a further discussion with the team and with the committee to show them how we can achieve the clinical objectives with the simulation and the high fidelity simulation that we have. In regarding to telehealth, telehealth has became the new normal for nurses, and nurses are going to be participating in virtual healthcare providing. And we would like our students to learn telehealth and to take part of the modules in the advanced med-surg under the supervision of a licensed an instructor who can be on the call with the students. And if the time allows, we would like to, in the next meeting or any further meeting, we would like to explain and show a detailed plan how we can implement telehealth and make sure it's safe, effective, and within the scope of practice for a vocational nurse. Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me, moderator, is there another
Yes, there
question?
is. Yes, there is.
Thank you.
The next attendee is Katherine Calvin. I will unmute your microphone. You have 3 minutes. I will give you a gentle reminder at the 30-second mark.
Hi, mine is, I appreciate my information. I just wanted to say with Institute of Technology in Modesto, we were fortunate to get into a clinical site starting last week, and this week we're able to obtain 2. And the reason we're able to do this, I really believe, is we're supplying all the PPEs, and we're also getting the students tested. So I just want to share that some of the sites are willing to help out if you're able to get the PPEs to students and stuff. So, and testing also. That's all I want to share. We're very fortunate.
Thank you very much for those comments. Are there any further comments? Are there any further comments from the board?
Yes, committee chair, I do see Abdel Yosef has his hand up again, so I will unmute his microphone. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I raised my hand first before I asked the question, so it was the same one. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions on this topic?
None from the audience.
Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item 7, is update, discussion, and possible action on school pass rate regulatory language. Ms. Yamaguchi, will you update us, please?
Yeah, as the committee will remember, this has been in the works for some time. Our staff has been working on the direct language, and we're getting ready to file the initial. And we should be able to have that item before the full board at the August meeting. At this point, I could be fair to the staff members who have been working assiduously on preparing the item. Mr. Matsumoto?
Yeah, this is Tim Matsumoto. Essentially, what we're doing here is paring down what was previously approved by the board on the pass rates. At one point, we had made a discussion about putting in a provision about a little bit more comprehensive. It had to do with in good standing, but we're planning on doing something later on in that particular section. So we thought we would just not address it in this package. We'll put it in the next reg package. So the reg package we're recommending to move forward is just very basic. It has to do with the percentage of pass rate and the number of years that school can be at that particular rate. So we're moving forward with that right now. Just basically, so we've simplified the package to include just really 2 items as opposed to several others. So that's the reason why we're recommending that this committee move forward with this. We've already presented this to the Legislation and Regulation Committee, and they agreed with the idea of moving forward with just a very pared down discussion of what we want to do for regulations. That's it.
We'd be
Thank
happy
you.
to answer questions.
Thank you for the update. I will do a roll call of our committee members for any questions. Ms. Amazola D. Herrera, do you have any questions?
Back to me at the end, please. Did you gather, can you come back to me again at the end?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can you come to me back at the end?
I still didn't understand what you said.
Hi, this is Paula. Can you come back to me at the end after all the others? I'm still reviewing.
Good deal. Okay.
Ms. Norton, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Yes, first, the audio is really spotty, and it's very difficult to hear. Secondly, I got booted off and I had to call back in. So I did miss some stuff, but regarding this, can someone help? So I understand and I've heard the fact that we're going to put a lot of language changes in here. I recall discussing changing the passing rate on the with the board to a flat 75%. I don't recall, if someone can help me recall, changing it from 2 years to 1 year if the school didn't have an acceptable pass rate. I don't recall having those discussions, so can someone point me, and it may be at a board meeting that I missed, but I don't recall having that discussion.
That discussion, if I'm not mistaken, happened in 2018. That initial discussion of the time frame. But more recently, when we've been redrafting it, gosh, what meeting would that have been at?
It's the meeting that we actually had the multiple components approved, and what we had done at this juncture was decided, because we're putting together a more comprehensive redo all of the regulations that we don't want to touch a particular subdivision in a regulation twice. In this regulation package and one that we're proposing that you'll see for the November board meeting. So that's why we've taken that away. That's the explanation for why we make this much more basic. But yes, we did have a discussion about the two provisions about changing it to reducing it from 2 years to 1 year, and also adding if deemed necessary by the board in the sole discretion. We added those provisions, and it was approved by the board. This is just a scaled down version of what was previously approved.
So I guess then what I'm asking is if someone can get back to me on when that discussion is so that I can refresh my memory, because I do recall 75%, but I don't recall changing from 2 years to 1 year. I just don't recall that piece of it.
Certainly, we'll
the only question that I have related to this. I understand everything else related to it. I just don't recall that.
Okay, let me look back and make sure that we have 100% clear timeline for you.
Thank you.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Yes. Okay, so I'm not sure that I recall for consecutive quarters or that language either voting on it, but I'm not sure about if I remember us voting on L2, whatever the board deems necessary in its sole discretion, but I like that part, and I think that. And then good standing, I probably read that before, but I'm not sure what that covered, and it would have been great to have the original proposed language there and show that being X'd out so we could see what was taken out. Yeah, I don't recall that specific language.
Okay. We did present the whole before and after, and I want to think it was at the February board meeting.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm going to have to go back and double check. But it had been presented for the full board at that point. And what Mr. Matsumoto is saying is that when the board approved the language initially, they had approved a few other pieces, some redefinitions of programs, teaching assistants, and the in good standing language. And as we've said, the idea here is that we want to do a much more thorough revision and update of that whole regulatory section. So we want to just pull that part back, changing that part back until we do the larger package. So we excised it out of this proposal.
If I may, this is Tim Matsumoto again. If the purpose of bringing it before this committee is just to say, this is what we're planning on doing, it still goes before the full board in August to vote on this. So if you would like to discuss this further and really even consider making, and if you don't particularly care for this language, or if you want to talk about it some more, an opportunity will be there in the August board meeting.
And we'll provide the information that we were just talking about, of course, for the August discussion.
Okay, I'd like to take a minute. Ms. Amazola de Herrera, did you have a question that you wanted to put forward?
Hi, everyone. So I needed to read the document one more time, and I agree with some of my colleagues that I do not remember the discussion on the changing from 2 years to 1 year. And my question is for those who are active. I'm a public member, so for those who are active in schools, can someone answer what are the implications from going from 8 quarters to 4 quarters. And with regards to the students, I'm just concerned that the students might be starting a class, and the school might go into provisional, and then they might lose their certification, and then the student is now graduating, or from a school that's no longer certified. I just want to know what, like, a 1 year seems to be a very short time period where a student can go in and out, come into a school that's in compliance, and then graduate when the school is out of compliance, and that's when a student's making decisions. They spend a lot of money in their education and time, and I just want to know, what are the implications for students was changing this?
Actually, there aren't any implications on the students themselves. Changing it from 2 years to 1 year allows BVNPT to work more nimbly, I think, with the schools, because we'll see the trends quicker, and we'll be able to start working with them more quickly along the path, so that we're able to work with them to develop new strategies and some other workarounds to basically reverse their trends. So basically, this is actually really good for the students. It allows us to, like I said, work more closely and more quickly with the schools to be sure that they are taking note of their results, and they're making corrective measures sooner. So really, a student has better information sooner on whether to choose that program or not. It doesn't affect the current student bodies at all, and it certainly isn't. It would have to be fairly drastic for them to be absolutely decertified within that 1 year period.
I wanted to comment that I like to think of it as early intervention for the school. We do early intervention for students, and this is early intervention for the school, catching it early so it can be taken care of in a timely manner and not get out of control. And it is a positive for the students. Any other comments?
Committee Chair, there is a public comment from the audience from Edward Cramp. I will unmute his microphone now. Mr. Cramp, your microphone is unmuted. You have 3 minutes to speak. At the 30-second mark, I will give you a gentle reminder.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I think this is a very interesting proposal. I'm speaking right now just in my own capacity as, I guess, as a citizen of California, not with respect to any particular client. I do a lot of work in higher education, and looking at this proposal just from an institution's perspective, I just have a couple of comments. One, I think the 4 quarters is just not long enough for the institutions to demonstrate improvement. I understand the comments from Ms. Mountain and from Ms. Yamaguchi, but I think that just giving an institution 4 quarters as a benchmark to measure it is really too quick. Also, the 75% as a number for passage, untethering that percentage of pass rate from the average rate in the state, I think is probably not the right way to go, because the 75% is just a random number. You could see fluctuations from year to year that won't be captured by that. And then finally, under subsection 2, where it speaks to the board being able to act in its sole discretion, that, just from my perspective, that is a standard that is impossible to comply with because it's impossibly vague. It basically allows the board to take whatever action it wants for whatever reason it wants. And there's no way for the institutions to know ahead of time what it is that they have to comply with in order to meet the standards under that section. So I think that the board really should take a closer look at that. And if the board wanted to enumerate some specific standards that might require quicker action, that would give notice to the institutions and the students that these are the things that have to be complied with. We'll take a closer look at this before the August meeting and see if we have any other comments, but that's what I see just off the top of my head here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any further comments?
Yes, there are. I will unmute Shara Carey. Shara, your mic is unmuted. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I will give you a gentle reminder at the 30-second mark.
I'm sorry, I was attempting to bring in a discussion about a previous topic that you guys were discussing, not on this one, so I will waive my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments?
Yes, I will unmute Keith Zacharan. You are unmuted, Keith. Go.
Pardon me, I did not have a comment.
Are there any further comments? Okay, having no further comments, we will move on to agenda item 8. Update, discussion, and possible action on education school fee legislation. Ms. Yamaguchi, will you update us, please?
Pardon me, Madam Chair, but I believe we need a motion from the committee to proceed on the pass rates language to bring it forward to the board in August.
Oh, okay.
The Ledge Regs Committee already did as well, but we would appreciate a motion from this committee as well.
Do we have a motion from the committee?
I moved to bring the pass rate suggested language to the August board meeting.
Do we need a second for that?
Yes, please.
You do.
Do we have a second?
One second.
Thank you. Was that Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
I moved, but I have not heard a second.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Can we call for a vote on whether to move this forward to the August board meeting?
This is Cheryl Turner. Will there be any further discussion?
Yes, let's open it to the board for further discussion.
Okay, so we said that we were waiting for documentation on when we last voted on these issues. That was one thing.
Actually, if I could answer that right now. It was presented at the May board meeting this past May, and it was voted on. And let me flip through here. And I do see Good standing, the pardon me. We do see the yeah, images there. Let me, like I said, let me absolutely point out the sections that were voted on in May, but it had been on the agenda then.
Okay. And then
Elaine, was this the educational committee or was this the general?
It was the general board meeting.
and this is Cheryl Turner. I do want to acknowledge a point made by one of the speakers that even though I do like L2 because it gives absolute power, and I'm just joking, it is kind of broad and a little vague. So maybe we could work on identifying, providing more detail.
We absolutely could do that. I think in regulatory language, providing more detail is sometimes a little bit of a two-edged sword. But as I said, the language was distinctly there. The 75%, the 8 to 4, and the board and its sole discretion language was in the draft that the board approved in May.
Are my comments.
Now, if the committee, well, obviously the board, the full board is going to be discussing this in August. But if there are any specific points to add to that discussion, just go ahead and let us know what that might be. Any potential changes, and like as I said, the other language that the board had approved in May had to do with the credentialing, not the credentialing, the qualifications of the teaching and administrative faculty. And as I said, we feel that it's better to not address that in this package, but to hold that until we're looking at the entirety of that section.
All right. Do we need further discussion or is the board ready to vote?
Madam Chair, we need public discussion.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
At this time, I do not see any further public comment.
So this, Donna, I thought we were still in board member discussion.
Oh, sorry, Donna, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with sending this to the full board without notice, without further discussion about the fact that I clearly don't remember changing from 8 to 4. I do very specifically remember the discussion on the tax rate. The May board meeting, I believe, was done via teleconference, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if I don't recall having any discussion related to that, I do recall Reg and some other discussions that were going on. So I would just state for the record that I will abstain from sending this to the board. And I think we do need to have further discussion related to whether or not we believe, and well, I certainly understand that early intervention to these schools that have issues is needed. There's nothing to prevent early intervention, But I think that 1 year from the time that a school commences to 1 year later, if you don't have an acceptable pass rate, that you're placed on provisional, I think it will cause an undue amount of provisional.
Well, first of all, it's may be placed on provisional.
Well, if it may be placed on provisional, that could be even more problematic, because then what if the board placed one but not another? So it seems like if there is a rule related to a pass rate and a rule related to if you didn't have it, then the rule should apply to all as opposed to may. So I guess that's all I'll say there. I mean, I don't recall it, so I can't render a vote on something that I don't recall other than to abstain. So that's all the discussion that I need to have. And again, I'm asking we haven't gotten any minutes from the May meeting that I've seen, so it's hard for me to recollect. I looked through my notes and I don't see anything. So
May I? This is Paula Anzola. I have identified the communication that came from Elaine on May 4th. There was 2 attachments. One attachment had, it was called General Requirements for School. And if you look in red, if you open that document, it clearly states the 75% and the change from 2 to 1 year. I hear what my colleagues are saying. At this point, all we are trying to do is bring this new language, well, not new, because it was proposed in May, to bring this language to the full board for review so that it may be voted by the full board. And I hear the concerns about changing from 2 years to 1 year, but I think that this has already gone to the full board once, and so I think that it will be a disfavor for us to not present this as was presented in May.
This is Cheryl Turner. Is that a motion to approve, or is it a motion to refer?
It's a motion to move this language again to the full board.
Yeah, that is, as I understood it, also to move the language forward to the full board, as it's already passed through the ledge committee, correct?
That's correct.
This is Ken Smith.
Thank you.
I would just like to state that at the Reg Committee, there was a motion to approve the language and recommend to the full board that it adopt the language. The board previously approved this language in addition to other changes that were removed. So what is before the committee at this point is to refer the pared down version of the revised regulation to the full board. The motion did not include approval. It just included moving it forward. Thank you.
Is this a time that we could call for a vote, or could you help us with our next steps?
You can call the question at this point. There's been opportunity for public comment, and I believe that the members of the committee all voiced their concerns and made comment about the motion. So it can move forward to a vote at this time if the committee's ready.
Are there any more comments from the committee? Without further comments, let's call for a vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera,
I'm sorry, yes.
Ms. Norton,
Abstain.
Ms. Turner, Ms. Turner.
Yes, move it.
Eh,
To refer, not to approve.
Thank you. And I will vote yes as well. All right. I believe we are now ready to move on to agenda item number 8. That will be update, discussion, and possible action on education school fee legislation. Ms. Yamaguchi, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have a very, very bare bones update. As I think everybody knows, the legislature has really pared down their bill list to move forward this year. And we've had a number of discussions with the legislative staff, and our own staff has been working a great deal on fine tuning our fee proposal. But at this point, both the Assembly and Senate committee staff have indicated that their preference is that we move this policy discussion in the context of our sunset evaluation in the spring. So at this point, while staff is going to continue to work on polishing the proposal and continue to wrangle some numbers, we do not have a vehicle to move forward this year.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaguchi. Are there any questions from the committee members? Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
No questions at this time.
Ms. Norton?
No questions.
Ms. Turner?
No questions.
Thank you. Were there any questions from the public?
I do not see any at this time.
Thank you. Having no questions, we will move on to the next discussion. Item number 9, Introduction to Article 5, Rulemaking Revision Concepts. Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you. As we alluded in the discussion about the past regulations, as we've been working with our whole regulatory language, our whole section, it's been obvious to us for a couple of years now that there's a vast amount of updating and fixing and cleaning up of the entire document, both documents rather. So our staff has been working on specifically on Article 5, which has to do with the school approval process. And so at this point in time, our staff is working on a really comprehensive approach to update and clean up that one section. What we hope to do is provide the board, well, first the committee in the fall, and then the board in November, with a very good draft of language to move forward. What we would like to do is have the board approve a package, at least conceptually, in November, so that we can place that on the rulemaking calendar in January and enable us to work forward with that. There's a lot going on with these but there's a whole lot of things that there are just things that we don't do anymore, or there are things that technology and the world have moved on and these regs have not. So I think we're looking at a very, very good redraft of that section.
Thank you. I'd like to call and see if there's any questions from the committee members. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Norton?
So I think I heard Elaine say that she would like to have a package approved for November. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you want this committee to approve a package that will then go to the full board for November, is that correct?
That's correct. We'll
So
be
when
having
will this
probably,
committee, when will this committee see the package?
when the committee sets a meeting probably to lead up to the November meeting. So I would imagine that would be mid-October, early mid-October.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public?
Great.
Okay, public
I
questions?
do not see any at this time. There are none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
If there are no further questions, we'll move to the next item. Update discussion and possible action on decision-making process.
Great.
Ms. Yamaguchi?
Great. Moderator, could you bring up that file, please?
Doing it right now, ma'am.
Thank you so much. As we were discussing a variety of things on today's agenda, I believe I mentioned a couple of times that we don't believe that there's really a clear enough understanding out in the field of how the decision-making process for the school recommendations runs. So what we wanted to do here is the staff has prepared a fairly, very concise, but very complete eye of how that decision-making process works. So from the work that the NECs do in partnership with the schools, and the recommendations go to first the executive officers review, although actually first they go to the SNAC's review, and then myself and legal counsel will review things. There are a number of proposal types and action items that stop with the executive officers review, but there are more that need to go to this committee first and then to the full board. Now, history and practice for BVNPT has been that the board has delegated the authority specifically for those executive officer recommendations and approvals. This happened so long ago that nobody can tell me or show me where that actually happened. My best intelligence says it was somewhere between 1994 and 1998. What we are looking to do, and I think this is something that we want to move forward with, not necessarily an action item for the August meeting, but to have some better discussion, I think, going along, is really, I think, look at great detail of this process and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, what is timely, what is not timely. There's a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with efficiency of having a lot of these very basic, for example, the approval of a program review survey, an approval of a new class for a program that's completely in compliance and doing great. Those things, having the executive officer and legal and the SNAC go ahead and approve those things so that they can move forward. Basically, this saves the board a vast amount of time, and it allows the schools to move a lot more nimbly so that they're not waiting for a quarter for the committee and then the board to render a decision. We've found that this has worked very well over the years, and truthfully, when I started this job, I was just told that this is how it works. But as I said, nobody can tell me when that delegation was made. So at this point in time, I really would value some discussion, and I think really kind of a reavowal, if you will, of that delegation. I think we could probably provide some more details of the what and the whens, but this essentially is how the process works. But as I said, it's really important that the community at large understand that when they receive a report from the NEC that says we recommend this, that doesn't mean that the NEC just decided something, just acted on something. There are still other channels and other reviews that have to happen. So as I said, we've been working on this grid here, and we would like to have some further discussion. And if not August, then certainly in November, we would want to have the committee and then the full board discuss and reauthorize that delegation. At this point, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
I don't have any questions right now. I think I was very pleased to see this flow chart. I'm a public member, and it's important. This provides a clear visual of what's happening. I would love to hear so thank you for those who put this together, and I would love to hear from my colleagues who are nurses or are in the field to see how this flow chart works in their schools.
Well, I'll respond to that. I just went through the process of having my school reviewed, and I think it's a very smooth process that the education consultants work very close with the schools. And there were some things that were out of date at my school, and we were able to get those rectified and put up to date in a very smooth and streamlined fashion. And I think that those are the kinds of things that we're working towards, so that it's this continual process and not just at the end of 4 years, you realize there's some things that should have been adjusted. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Norton, do you have any questions, comments, or discussion?
So I think this is a topic that has been a long time coming. It's good that we're going to have this discussion. So I look forward to having the discussion in the future. The only feedback I would give you here is just how we do business. We might want to add something that does it relates to schools, just for clarification purposes. But no, I think it's a good discussion. I think we need to have it. It'll be much more helpful and people can fully understand it. So yeah, I reviewed this document. I thought it looks great.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I also appreciate receiving this, and I think it would be a worthwhile discussion at some point to go through what authority, again, we've delegated, and whether it should remain in its current state or whether the board wants to take on some old additional responsibilities.
Are there further comments from the public?
Hello, this is the moderator. I do see one comment from Edward Cramp. I will unmute his microphone now.
Hello again, everyone. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. First, I would like to just point out I did wear a tie today, figuring that we would be on camera, so I did dress up for this occasion, even though you can't see me. I'm now disappointed that I didn't stay in my slippers working at home. I would echo some of the comments that I'm very glad to see this discussion taking place. I think this is really critically important in any regulatory environment where there is a board and a staff with an executive officer. It's really critical, and in fact, it's required by law that there be transparency on how decisions are made and how the authority, which is really vested in the board, is given, if it's given at all, to any of the staff members or the executive officer. And absent an express delegation under the government code, there isn't any delegation. The assumption is that those powers remain with the board. And that's really important from a due process protection standpoint for everyone who is regulated by the board. So, it really can't be the case under our system of government in California that a staff or a board, kind of delegates by accident or delegates by assumption or by the way things have already been done. It has to be done in a very specific way, and it needs to be done through regulation. And I'm looking at this chart here, which this is the first time I'm seeing this chart today, and my eyes are a little fuzzy, but I see down at the bottom of the box in the middle under Executive Officer Review, it says EO decisions regarding NEC recommendations are official board decisions and may be acted upon by the program following notification by the NEC. And I think that is really problematic. There is no record that I'm aware of, and I'm certainly not omniscient in this regard, where the things that are listed in that box above that statement have been delegated by the board to the executive officer. And that's not anything personal that has to do with Ms. Yamaguchi. It's certainly not. It's just a matter of following the law and what the law requires. And so I would encourage the group to really pursue this and make sure that, to the extent that the board has delegated any authority, that delegation is expressed and that it be properly documented and that the process for delegation is followed. Otherwise, the board is really not doing what it's been appointed to do by the governor. The ultimate responsibility for overseeing this sector lies with the board. And it's really important. Everyone has been chosen and selected for their role in this board for a reason by the governor, and your judgment and your personal involvement is required. So I'm glad to see this item up for discussion. I hope that there will be a robust discussion, and I look forward to hopefully participating in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Are there further comments from the public?
At this time, I do not see any other.
Right. If there are no other comments, we will move on to agenda item 12, discussion and possible action to make recommendations to the board. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the updates from the supervising nursing education consultant. My apologies, that's item number 11.
Hi, this is Marie. Well, I don't really have any updates. I think Elaine really covered it all. So, and I know we've got some board reports we need to go over, but I just want to, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work and participation. And as we all know, these are very trying times, and we're seeing things here that we never thought we would see and hear. And we're all working very hard to try to accommodate schools and to provide our students the best education, and also maintain our main mission, which is public safety. And sometimes I would like everybody to keep that in mind when we are talking about 100% clinical and things like that. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cordera. I'd like to move on to item number 12. Discussion and possible action to make recommendations to the board. Mr. Swenson, I'm not sure, does this go to the NECs or?
Yes, at this point, you would hear the various matters under item 12. So the NEC traditionally verbally report on their recommendations, and then the matters are discussed with allowance for representative of the program, directors, owners, or their legal counsel to respond to the recommendations, and then a motion to be made at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. So this is American Career College, and that will be Dr. Fairchild. Dr. Fairchild, are you there?
This is the moderator. I'm going to send her a message to make sure that her mic is working.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I hit it and it said that it was unmuted, but I don't know. Okay, so I'll start over. I'm sorry. On the agenda, on the number 4, I have that it's the 15th day, 2 months prior to the board meeting, where in the actual report it says September 15th. Those are the same dates. I just was clarifying it. And then also in the report under staff summary, where all of the dates are listed out, I omitted a email from December 14th, which is when I received the original request to increase the class from 50 to 60 students. However, I did not receive any documentation back until January 27th, or excuse me, until January 31st. I made a site visit on February 18th, 2020, and it was, everything was there. They had the physical space and faculty to accommodate the increase in students. On April 22nd, the program director was notified that due to ongoing disruptions in normalcy related to COVID-19, that I would not be making any recommendations to increase the class size until we got closer to the request for the June 27th date. On June 8th, the program director was notified that due to not having any clinical sites, that the recommendation would be to deny the increase in class. And I did ask her if she would like to withdraw her request and resubmit later. And she had said that she would like to do that. On June 9th, the program director said that she would wait. June 12th, an email was received from the Director of Accreditation and Licensing saying that they were not withdrawing their application and request. And so on June 22nd, the director resubmitted the request. On June 25th, verbal verification was received from 3 clinic sites saying that they would be willing to take students beginning July 6th. So my recommendation is to deny the increase for class size from 50 to 60 students, require the program to demonstrate that students are scheduled for clinical experiences to meet 50% of hands-on guidance, place the program on the November 20th, 2020 board meeting agenda to reevaluation of resources and reconsideration, require the program director to submit updated documents by September 15th, require the program director to submit documentation of adequate resources by October 30th. The program does have good pass rates with 92%. They have 2 skills labs that have been set up for social distancing, and those pictures are in the report. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
No questions.
Are there any public questions?
I do see Mr. Cram's hand up again, so I will unmute his mic for him.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry, everyone. I think that was a mistake. I apologize.
No problem. At this time, oh, go ahead, Donna. I'm sorry.
So it's actually a process question, I guess. This school is not currently on provision. This school is not being recommended to be placed on provision, correct?
That is correct.
So it is my understanding that the purpose of the Education Practice Committee is to review schools that are going to be placed on provisional, not to review schools that are requesting, well, for any other reason. This topic seems like it would go to the full board as opposed to this board, because the delegation that this committee has been given is to review schools that are going to be placed on provision. So that's my question. I'm not sure why this school is at this committee.
The reason I brought it to the Education Committee was because of the recommendation to deny their increase at the moment, and then to take it to request to go to the board meeting in November.
I understand that. I'm just not sure that with the current direction that this committee was formed under, what we currently, is my understanding that we only deal with schools here that are going to be placed on provisional.
Okay, that was not my understanding. Thank you.
This is Cheryl Turner. Yeah, I would like to know, I would like to have that clarified. Is that our function? Is to only deal with schools on provisional.
Ms. Yamaguchi?
Thank you for the question. Technically, and this was something that the board did discuss at some length about what the specific purviews for each committee was. But in this year, because so many things are irregular, we decided that it would be better to err on the side of caution and present more of the decisions to first the committee and then the board, so that we could have a little bit more deep conversation, hopefully with the programs themselves. And truthfully, like I said, it's really a response to the pandemic more than anything else. But if the committee wants to have a more substantive conversation again about its a specific purviews and jurisdiction, we could certainly put that on the agenda for next time.
I would like to hear more about that. I don't think I've ever seen any clear statement about it, other than what we worked on when we created the committees and we had each identified what we thought some of its responsibilities were. We could just add that to the future agenda item.
Certainly.
Were there comments from the public? And I believe a representative from American Career College, is that person available to speak?
Committee Chair, this is the moderator. I do not see any questions.
Thank you.
Comments from the public at this time.
Is there a representative from American Career College?
I do not see anybody that has indicated that they are from the American Career College.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion to support waiting until November for board meeting to increase the class size?
Madam Chair, this is Ken Swan.
Yes.
First of all, before I make a recommended motion, I would inquire from Dr. Fairchild whether the program itself objected to her recommendation.
Yes and no. They, instead of starting their July class with 60 students, they started with 50. And then they are wanting to start their January class with 60 students.
While the committee does not have to act on this, a recommended form of motion that we're inclined to want to recommend to the full board that the report and recommendations of the nurse education consultant be approved and adopted would be that the committee approves the recommendations and refers them to the full board for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion would be to refer them to the full board for consideration?
To approve the recommendations and refer them to the full board for consideration.
Thank you. You're cutting in and out. Thank you. Is that Ms. Norton? Thank you.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Is that to accept the recommendations and refer it? Or is that to approve the recommendations?
It's essentially, in my opinion, the same. Would be to accept the recommendation of the NEC and to refer it to the full board and defer it to the full board for the November meeting.
All right, I second it, Cheryl Turner.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public?
I do not see any at this time.
Thank you. Can we call for a vote? Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Okay. We will move on to Guernick Academy of Medical Arts. Ms. Silverman?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So, Guernick Academy of Medical Arts, San Mateo campus is presented for consideration of placement on provisional status. According to section 2526.1C of the vocational nursing rules and regulations, the board may place any program on provisional approval when the program does not meet all the set requirements within chapter and section 2526. This school has currently 9 quarters of pass rates, which are below the 10% average, which they are supposed to be in compliance with. 2530I states that the program shall maintain a yearly average minimum pass rate on the licensure that does not fall below 10%. The last time they were in compliance would have been second quarter of 2018. My recommendations are to put a program on provisional approval for a 2-year period beginning at the August 21st board meeting. Require the program to submit an action plan for their NCLEX PN first-time test takers by October 1st, which gives them about 2 months after the board meeting to put that together. My recommendation is to require the program to not admit any additional classes without prior approval by the board. And this is so that the board and the NEC can have close monitoring on the school and that we can make sure that we are protecting the students and the public safety. My recommendation is that they provide a report in 6 months, but no later than March 15th, 2021, and also in 15 months, no later than June 15th, which is basically an evaluation of their program to try to determine what is the cause of the problem and how can they possibly take actions to fix the problem. I would like to let the committee know that since I wrote the report, they have added 1 additional faculty. So they currently have 14 approved faculty. 2 of those faculty are for teaching only, which would then leave them 10 instructors designated to teach clinical. One of the recommendations is to lower their ratio from a 15-to-1 to a 10-to-1, which would allow the students to have a more one-on-one personalized attention in clinical. And in doing so, then they would no longer have the required amount. I've already had a conversation with Larissa, who's the program director, and I told her that before the board meeting, she would need to put 2 more clinical instructors on staff. She has 1 that she's currently working on at the moment, but I do not have that application. And she said that she would be more than willing to put another additional faculty on staff to help teach clinical. So then at that time, when it does go to the board, she will be in compliance. And that is my report.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from the board? Go ahead.
This is Paula Amazola, no questions.
Thank you, Paula. Ms. Norton?
I do have questions, but I have a question more related to the response letter that Guernick submitted.
Okay, well,
so
I believe they have someone.
Questions for, I don't have any questions for the consultant.
Thank you.
Ms. Turner? Ms. Turner?
Yes, I did not have a chance to go into detail about researching the power of the board to require 10 students per instructor when I recall that it's no more than 15 students per instructor, which was one of the arguments made by the school.
Ms. Turner, normally when a school is being brought to the education committee due to low pass rates, it is our hopes that we can rectify that situation and to protect the students that are enrolling in that program. And one of the ways that we try to protect the public and the safety of the students is by lowering or recommending the board to lower the amount to 1 to 10. Therefore allowing a more one-on-one, so to speak, personalized clinical experience for the students, which then increases their probability of passing the NCLEX PN on the first time.
Oh yeah, I absolutely understand the rationale for it, but I was just wondering legal perspective, because they're arguing it's not legal. Yeah, and clearly they have their pass rate is not very good, so maybe it makes all that moot.
Okay, are there other questions from the board? Are there questions from the public?
Committee Chair, we do have the director from Guernick with her hand raised. I will unmute her mic now.
Hello? Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Larissa Revzina, and I'm a program director of vocational nursing in Guernick Academy of Medical Arts. And first of all, I wanted to appreciate our current nurse education consultant, Faye Silverman, who working with us the last 2 months. We may not have this conversation if we would have appropriate and in time guidance from previous NEC Margarita Valdez and without false reassurance placing us on active monitoring. I wanted to say that, and we discussed with Faye before, that we're not agree of being placing on a provisional accreditation and removing ongoing admission. A letter with our response and rationale of not agreeing was emailed to our NSC on the last Thursday, and I hope you receive it on time. Let me introduce the Assistant Program Director of Vocational Nursing Program and our Dean of Nursing, Samantha Sanchez. She will present our rationale.
Thank you to the BVNPT Education and Practice Committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee. Our institution, Guernick Academy of Medical Arts, is committed to continuous review of our academic programs, that is to strengthen and support the achievement of student learning goals. In January of this year, we met with our former nursing education consultant. There were discussions about placing San Mateo program on progress monitoring as an alternative to provisional approval in order to achieve our goal of meeting the required NCLEX-PN pass rate. Comprehensive action plans were discussed and also provided to her. We believe that the progress monitoring is appropriate and are fully committed to working with our new NEC, Faye Silverman, to improve our graduates' pass rate. In order to facilitate our progress monitoring, we request monthly meetings with Ms. Faye Silverman to discuss our initiatives, as well as also receiving support and feedback on our plans to increase the pass rate. This will allow Guernick to demonstrate the continuous trend of increased pass rate and give us an opportunity to receive recommendations and support. Ms. Silverman has shared with us her approach to working with other programs like ours that need to increase exam pass rate, and we understand that she has successfully helped them reach their goals while avoiding provisional approval. After working with Ms. Silverman since last month, we are confident that she can be effective in helping us meet our goals expeditiously. We also respectfully request that the committee allow us this opportunity since she was just recently assigned to us on June 1st, 2020. Our pass rate and projection for our quarter two demonstrates an upward trend, although not meeting the 10% pass rate for the San Mateo campus. All efforts from faculty, staff, and administration have been focused on implementation of changes and improvement to deliver the highest possible standards of resources for our student success. With the BVNPT support and maintaining the VN program at the San Mateo campus on progress monitoring under the guidance of Ms. Silverman, this will really help us and provide us a new opportunity to have consistent oversight of the progress that we have critically needed for the past several years. Guernick requests the opportunity to improve its test results while in progress monitoring status and not on provisional. The language of Title 16 at the CCR 2530 provides that failure to maintain the required yearly average minimum pass rate for 2 years or 8 consecutive quarters may be cause to place a program on provisional approval. And that is on emphasis on the word may in that language. Guernick requested the board take into consideration the efforts Guernick has made and will continue to make to improve pass rates and use its discretion to not place Guernick on provisional approval at this time. Thank you to Madam Chair, Dr. Mountain, for mentioning earlier regarding early intervention. In that account, early intervention should be provided to those schools that are at risk before they develop into or become a provisional. And in that essence, the role of the NEC is critical. At the very beginning, at the very first quarter, that the NCLEX-PN pass rate is below standard. And regarding a decision-making process,
It is also before rendering a decision, performing the comprehensive analysis of the program in a collaborative environment between the program director or the program and the NEC. The parameters and the process of determination is collaborative and important and also very critical before rendering a decision. Thank you so much to the Education and Practice Committee for hearing us and for providing us the opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Are there further questions from the board for Ms. Sanchez? Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
I think I'm confused, or I'm just not reading this report correctly. Is there the report that was submitted to us says to put the school in provisional. However, the school used another term. Are these similar or they're different? I'm just
the term that the school is using is not a term that the Board of Vocational Nursing uses. It is actually a term that the RN board uses. It is not within our regulations. Our term is provisional approval, and that when a school reaches 8 quarters, they are recommended to go on to provisional approval and to remove their ongoing admission. Their contention is the word may, which is in our regulations. It is still my recommendations, since they have been 9 quarters below the 10%, that they go on provisional approval and take away their ongoing admissions and allow me to work with the school. And then when they reach a level of NCLEX, which is within regulations, then I would reconsider pulling them off of a provisional approval.
Any further questions? Ms. Norton?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So first, I just want to make a comment that it almost sounded like the school was blaming the NEC for their low pass rates for the last 9 quarters. And I understand that they are confident that working with their current NEC, they can turn this around, but I don't think that was fair to say that had they had better intervention from their old NEC, that they wouldn't be having their low pass rates. Secondly, I need a clarifying question, because in addition to the topic that they made about the board may place a program on provisional, I have a question for the NEC, because Guernick has raised the issue that being on provisional approval, that they cannot admit new classes beyond the established pattern, which is what is in our regulations. So I guess I need clarification from maybe Mr. Swenson about how does that.
Can I comment to that? So if their ongoing admissions is taken away from them, they can still go to the board and ask for the same amount of students that they previously had, but it then will become a board action instead of them ongoing admissions where they do it automatically.
Did that help you?
Well, I think that is directly my question, because I'm looking at the board's regulations right now, and it says any program holding provisional approval may not admit new classes beyond the established pattern of admission previously approved by the board. And that it refers to the defined number of students per class, the frequency of admission for the previous 6 classes. But what I've seen over the past time that I've been on the board, and this topic has not come in this light before, is that when we place a school on provisional, we will take away their ability to admit students. It's not even really to admit new, it's just to admit their next group of students. And I am wondering if the board has authority to actually do that. So I would need that question answered, because they raised it in their response letter, and I don't know the answer to that question.
If I may, I'd like council to respond to that.
And before you respond, I'm not saying that I agree with them. I just need this very important process question to be answered. I think it's, this school for 9 quarters has had substandard pass rates. That's a whole nother topic. So.
Exactly right. So may I defer to Mr. Swenson?
Mr. Swenson?
I apologize. He did get knocked off the line.
This is the moderator. I don't see that Mr. Swenson is currently in the meeting.
He's trying to get back on, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Suggestions on what we should do at this point?
If I,
He's there.
There he is. Right.
I sincerely apologize. I dropped off at the most inopportune moment there. With regard to the question about ongoing admissions for a school placed on provisional, the particular subsection of the regulation acts as a prohibition for starting new classes beyond the established pattern. However, by longstanding interpretation of the board that is evident in many of its prior decisions, it does not operate as a restriction modifying the pattern if the circumstances warrant modification. It only restricts new classes for any program that's placed on provisional. It doesn't restrict the board's ability to alter the admission pattern if that's appropriate. I hope that answers the member's question.
So then, Mr. Swenson, what you're saying is that the board has the ability, as they have in the past, to prohibit new classes from starting based upon the fact that the school has been placed on a provisional.
The board has the ability to alter the admission pattern based on the circumstances that warrant a school being placed on provisional. Separately, under the regulation, any school placed on provisional is prohibited from adding new classes beyond the established pattern of admissions.
So then I guess my question would be in the new classes. If the previous 6 classes had 20 and they were going to admit 20, would that be considered a new class?
That would not be a new class if that were the pattern of admissions.
So would the board, so I guess what I'm looking for is, does the board have the authority to prohibit a school that they have placed on provisional from making the school come before the board to ask for a new class for new students? I guess that's my question. It's always been my assumption that we did, because it has been the policy of the board since I've been on the board that is what happened. And this issue, to my knowledge, has not been raised before.
Yes, the board has that authority under its longstanding interpretation of its own regulation, so that it's within the discretion of the board to do that. However, it would have to make a determination. Under the regulation, the additional classes are prohibited automatically. but that doesn't prevent the board from taking action to change the pattern. So the board does have that power and jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Turner, do you have any questions?
No, my questions were covered.
Okay. Are there any public questions?
Committee Chair, this is the moderator. I do see that the director of Guernick has her hand up again, and another public member as well.
Thank you.
Her microphone.
Hello, Jessica. Could you unmute at Quorum?
Excuse me?
Thank you. We can just please proceed to the next.
Okay.
She's asking for Mr. Edward Crump to be unmuted so he can respond.
Doing that now. Here we go. Mr. Cramp, your microphone is unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And just for clarification for the committee, I'm Edward Cramp of Dwayne Morris, and I'm actually here today on behalf of Guernick Academy. I did have some discussion before the meeting today with Mr. Swenson and was assured that I'd be able to speak on behalf of the school. So to the extent my comments are logged for the record, I'd just like them to be logged on behalf of the Guernick Academy, if that's okay.
Please proceed.
Okay, great. So I would like to address really 2 points. One is the issue of the student-teacher ratio, and the other is the ongoing admissions issue and what can be done at this stage by the board, this committee, or the nurse consultant. I think the comment earlier by Ms. Turner, and then I think was echoed by other members of the committee about what are the powers of the board and where is the board constrained. I think these are 2 areas where the law very clearly speaks to what the board can and can't do. With respect to the student-teacher ratios, the ratios are established by law. They're not set as an optional. The way the language leads in the code is that the student-teacher ratio shall be 15:1. There's no mention of reducing it or increasing it. And it may be that in a particular instance, a school may choose to have a higher student-teacher ratio, or a nurse consultant may suggest that they have a higher student-teacher ratio. But the law says what it says, and this committee, neither this committee nor the board has the ability under the law to alter that amount. The same goes for the ongoing admissions issue. And I think it was Ms. Norton, if I was following the blinking lights on my screen correctly, who read the language from 16 CCR 2526.1D, which has very specific language about what the board can and can't do with respect to a program placed on provisional. And that language says very clearly that the school may not admit new classes beyond the established pattern of admission previously approved by the board. Now, it may be that the board has been acting differently. It may have been acting differently for many years. It may have been acting differently for as long as the collective memory of this group goes. But that doesn't mean that the board has been acting legally. And it would be unlawful for this committee to accept a recommendation and forward it to the board that would place an illegal limitation on the ability of Guernick Academy to enroll students. So I would ask that the committee not move forward with that. And I will just note for the committee that this wasn't something that just arose here today. In fact, Guernick received a letter in June from the nurse consultant indicating that there was a meeting of the board and that the board had acted to already place this program on provisional status, and that the school was not able to enroll any additional students. What we've learned since, of course, is that there was no board meeting, and that letter has since been rescinded. So I would like to just raise the issue I think that was brought up earlier by one of the committee members, Ms. Turner, about the proposed rule that would give the committee more discretion and and the board to have more discretion to act in response to what schools are doing or what they're seeing. And here you can see in a situation where the code has very specific language about what is permitted and what's not permitted, and yet what we have is a letter going from a nurse consultant to a program indicating that a board meeting took place and that a vote was taken when no such board meeting happened and no such vote was taken. In here, unfortunately, Guernick has been forced to take legal action against the board in order to ensure that its rights are protected. And that action is currently pending in the Sacramento Superior Court, as your council knows. The action that you take here today, if you choose to act illegally and to vote to restrict admissions beyond what is permitted by the code, that is not going to leave Guernick with any choice but to proceed with the litigation in an attempt to correct the board to keep it from moving beyond what its statutory authority is. So I would really encourage you to think carefully before voting to move something up to the board that is an item that this committee and the board do not have the authority under the law to implement. That's all I have, and I'm happy to take questions.
Is this case the subject of litigation, Mr. Swenson?
Yes, there was a petition and complaint filed that was referred to the Office of the Attorney General for defense. That was a fairly recent development, and we have not had an opportunity to report that litigation to the executive committee because there isn't an executive committee at the present time, and we have not had a regular board meeting during which we could report it during closed session. So I would ask that we not discuss the subject matter litigation at this point, and that we focus on the issues presently before the committee with respect to the recommendation of the NEC.
Mr. Swenson, can you provide us legal counsel at this time?
I can provide you legal counsel with respect to the pending matter, but it would not be germane to the agenda item to discuss the litigation. And it's not possible to have a closed session to provide that sort of advice.
Thank you.
In connection with
Can someone speak to the letter that was sent to Guernick and then not sent to Guernick?
I can speak to that. There was a letter sent that was retracted. So that the letter that Mr. Crampton is referring to is something that's been retracted.
Can someone speak to how the letter got sent in the first place? Was it just?
There was an executive officer meeting, and the letter was sent after the executive officer meeting.
Thank you.
If I may.
Please.
Thank you. If I may, the letter that was sent to Guernick had been sent with the improper wording. So rather than saying that the NEC had provided a report that was considered in the executive officer's review, it basically said that the board had. Now, you have to understand that in custom and practice, the board is the board, and when we work for the board, we would refer to the board. But in error, slight error, it did refer to an actual board vote, which did not happen. The letter that had been sent was rescinded, and the letter that followed up more clearly outlined that at the executive officer's review, the NEC's recommendations had been approved to be referred to this committee. So the initial issue, if I may, to immediately halt Guernick Academy's admissions was rescinded. But the initial recommendation by the NEC to place Guernick on provisional was forwarded and properly to this committee to discuss and then to refer or not refer to the board.
So
Thank
is
you.
the issue today whether or not to place them on provisional?
Yes, the issue today is to place them on provisional or not, based on their pass rates.
Based on the pass rates.
So then there's also the question of, okay. I think I see in the chat that someone wants Mr. Cramp wants to address this point, and then I think I have a motion.
Moderator, could you unmute Mr. Cramp, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Cramp, you are unmuted.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Madam Moderator?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So I would like to just address a couple of things. One, the letter which was received by the Guernick Academy on June 11th is not the first letter that had identical language coming from staff to an approved program purporting to rescind their ability to enroll students. We're aware of at least one other one, and there may be others where they received identical language. So I think the notion that this was sent in error is just simply not the case. I'm happy if there's a way technologically to do it, to share my screen with the board to show you what the letter looks like. If there's not, I will just tell you the letter is quite simple. It says, Dear Ms. Revzina, the board at its June 11, 2020 meeting considered the consultant's report to request to admit students. The board adopted the following recommendations. And then there are 4 recommendations, including that the program would be required to obtain board approval prior to admission of any additional classes. And then there's an acknowledgement that was sent that was required to be returned, which Guernick did not return by June 19th. Now, both for Guernick and for the other institution we're aware of, this letter was sent about barely a week to a week and a half before the scheduled start of a next round of students. I may have my dates wrong there. If I do, I apologize. But the very clear message here from the staff is that instead of sending this matter to the full board for a vote, as is required by law, although I would note the rescission of ongoing admissions is not permitted by law, but nonetheless, the idea is that they are purporting that a board decision was taken when in fact no board meeting was had and no decision was made and no vote was taken. And this is very, very troubling that this would happen. And I would encourage you at the appropriate time to read Guernick's litigation that it's filed in Superior Court in Sacramento to educate yourselves a little bit about what the behavior was here that led to this, because it is unfortunate that Guernick was forced to do this, but to receive a letter barely a week or two before the start of a new scheduled class of students is just something that shouldn't be happening, particularly when the board doesn't have the authority to do what it was purported to do in this letter. And I'm happy to share my screen if there's a way for me to do that technologically.
I don't believe there is, and I apologize. In light of what we consider actually an error, really, actually our staff has been working to make a much clearer template letter, template report, and other documents so that no miscommunication, no misunderstanding is possible in the future. But I will say that I believe that the letter format used has been used in the past. I would agree with Mr. Cramp there. But that most program directors, upon receiving that, understood that that meant that it was moving forward in the process. But I could be mistaken here. Mr. Swenson, did you want to make any further comments?
My recommendation is to follow the agenda item as described, not to depart from what's in there, because we will run afoul of Bagley Keene if we do that. And a discussion of the litigation and the letter and its rescission, I think, are not germane to the agenda item. So the agenda item is the recommendation of the NEC. If further discussion and action are to take place, it should be focused on that rather than on these other collateral issues.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. So if I'm correct, then the NEC has a number of different recommendations here, some of which are objected to by the school. But the key recommendation from the NEC to this committee is to place the school on provisional based on 9 consecutive quarters of substandard test passage rate.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Yamaguchi. Is there a motion by the board or are there further questions?
I would move that we accept the NEC's recommendations with the exception of items number 4 and number 6.
Is there a second?
Due to their response.
Hello, this is the moderator. We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess as the conference room here, we need to get them set back up again. It lost connection.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
I would like for Donna to restate or repeat her motion.
I'd be happy to. So, because I was wanting to amend it anyway. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I recommend that we accept the NEC's recommendation with the exception of, I lost it. I'm going to pull it back up under line. Can you scroll? So it would be with the exception of let me just pull it up under mine. The exception of number 4 and number 6, and place the issue I don't even know how to word this. Place the issue for number 4 and number 6 on the full board and reconvene the issue of number 4 and number 6 at the full board meeting. Or place them, I guess I need help with Mr. Swenson here. So what I want to do here is accept the recommendation because clearly the school has some issues. So we want to get that started. And we want to continue the discussions related to what they're objecting to, which is number 4 and number 6. So Mr. Swenson, how would I word that recommendation?
The recommended motion would be something like this, that you move to accept the NEC's report, except for recommendation 4 and 6, that you refer the accepted portion of the NEC's report to the full board for consideration, and that you ask the other items to be placed on the agenda for discussion at the full board
Thank
meeting.
you. Thank you. That is my motion.
Is there a second?
Cheryl Turner, second.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
At this time, I do see the director, Larissa, her hand is back up. I will unmute her at this time.
Thanks very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just like, okay.
Hello?
No, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'd like to call for a vote from the board. Ms. Amazola, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Ken Swenson here. I would just like to state that the letter from Guernick dated July 22nd, 2020, from Dr. Rezina and Dean Sandias to nurse education consultant Silverman, which was sent as an addendum to the agenda materials to all members of the committee, be made part of the record of this meeting without objection.
Do we need to vote on that, Mr. Swenson?
No.
Thank you. Is this time?
If there's objection, someone can voice it. Otherwise, it can.
All right. Is there any objection to the letter being part of the record? All right.
Committee Chair, I do see Mr. Cramp's hand up again. Would you like for me to unmute him?
Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Committee Chair. I apologize for raising my hand again. It's a little unclear to me exactly what it is that's being sent to the board for a vote. I'm not sure if, I mean, it seems to me that this is kind of a binary question. Either you're voting to, and I know this is Mr. Swenson's job, but it seems that you're either voting to accept the recommendation, send it to the board, or not, in which case whatever you don't send to the board would be a dead letter. It seems like you're trying to find a middle ground here, but I'm not sure that's possible, and it just, I think, risks confusing the record on what exactly is being considered by the board. So if the vote is thumbs up on everything and then the board's going to look at it, then that is what it is. We obviously disagree with it. But if you're going to reject two pieces of it, then that seems to me it needs to be clear in the record at this point. Otherwise, we're going to have a very muddled record at the board level. Thank you.
This is Cheryl Turner. I thought that the first motion Donna made was clearer, just to delete 4 and 6, and that 4 and 6 could be items that we take up as a matter of a general discussion for the board.
So this is Donna. The reason that I restated the motion, and I am free to restate the motion to just delete 4 and 6. Although that does leave the school out here without having to answer to 4 and 6, and so I'm trying to reserve coming back. Clearly, the board needs more discussion on these two items. So that was my thought process. I don't want to hold up this. I don't want to reject the whole thing, but I do appreciate the stance that they are taking and trying to hold being able to come back to this school, because if we just delete it, then do we have recourse to come back to the school? I guess we would, because they're still on provisional. So I'm happy to go either way. I can make the motion. It probably would be clearer to just make the motion to accept the NEC's recommendation, striking 4 and 6.
Do I have a second for the amended motion?
Cheryl Turner seconds the amended motion.
Thank you, Cheryl. At this time, I'd like to call for a vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Madam Chair, since
yes.
there wasn't a motion, could we please give at least an opportunity for public comment?
Yes, sir. Is there public comment?
I will unmute Mr. Cramp's microphone again.
Sorry about that. I keep leaving the little hand thing on. I apologize.
Do you have no comment, sir?
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I'd like to call for the vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Before I vote, can I get a clarification? The items that were excluded from the motion, do we need a second motion to put those forth to the full board?
It can be put on the agenda separately for discussion and possible action. The motion pending before the committee at this time would result in a recommendation to the board that it accept the report with the exception of items 4 and 6. And then the only practical effect of the motion pending before the committee is to allow the matter to be taken up without another motion. Because it came. So simply avoid the requirement that there be a motion and a second at the full board meeting.
Can you clear the last two sentences? There was a sound that really disrupted my thought.
All right, so the net effect of the motion that's pending before the committee would be to avoid the necessity of a motion and a second at the full board meeting. It doesn't prevent the board from taking up the other issues at the board meeting if it's properly agendized.
Okay. All right. Can I vote yes on the current motion?
Ms. Martin? Ms. Norton? Donna? Oh, dear.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Turner?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. I'd like to move on to Southeastern California College. Ms. Silverman.
Hello. Southeast California College is being presented for consideration of requests to admit students. My recommendation is to deny the request for them to admit a class of 17 students and to place them on provisional approval. They've had one class go through their program, the 5 students that you see at the top of the enrollment table. As of today's date, not one student in their first class has passed NCLEX. They currently have a second class. They claim that they've made a lot of changes in that second class. I would like to put them on provisional approval and then wait until that second class has an opportunity to test, so where we have solid statistical analysis before I say yay or nay, or make a recommendation of yay or nay for a third class. So that class is supposed to graduate in October. So I would say somewhere between December, maybe January, their students would be able to have the opportunity to test. And at that point, I would be willing to consider a third class. At this point, their NCLEX pass rates are negative 79% for the last 3 quarters.
Are there questions for Ms. Silverman from the board?
The other thing I will say is that this school doesn't have ongoing admissions and would not be affected by the previous discussion. So when I made my recommendation, so I made a recommendation of require the program to admit no additional classes without prior approval. They already are under that. It's a continue to require, I guess, essentially, because they cannot admit any students without board permission.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Silverman. Questions from the board?
I have questions related to, and it's going to be for all of these schools now. There's also a regulation here for number 7, require the program to provide no less than 1 instructor for every 10 students. In light of the previous conversation that we have had, and just for clarity, at the end of the meeting for next agenda items, I will make the request that we take up these 2 topics at our next full board meeting. But does the NEC see it within her purview to remove number 7?
Well, the reality is that there's only 7 students in this class, so it's not going to make a difference for this particular school. I would respectfully request that there be a line item at the board meeting to discuss both of these for future references for other schools. But this class, their 92319, only has 7 students, and so they're not going to have more than 10 students in a class. So the board report could stand without making a difference one way or the other for this particular school. But I do think that it needs to be brought up to the full board in a discussion on those 2 items.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Are there any public questions?
Madam Chair, this is the moderator. I do see the director. I will unmute the microphone. And Domingo, your microphone is unmuted. You can speak if you wish.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'd like to thank the Education and Practice Committee members for allowing me to speak. I'd like also to thank Ms. Faye Silverman for giving the report about our school. It had been amazing working with her. Realizing that this was the first cohort, was the first class that we have had since we started the school, it had been a learning experience for us. So with that learning experience, we had initiated changes on the 4th term for this ongoing class, and we are hoping that there'll be more success with them. I just have a little statement to make about the first class. So I was wondering, I know that Ms. Silverman had stated about the issuing of provisional status, and which already was written in here, but I'm looking at having the 2 graduates being already scheduled to test in August. And one of them is testing on August 6th, and the other one will be testing on the last week of August. So we had done measures to help these 2 students pass, although I recognize that even if these 2 pass, we would still be 40%, which is, below the 10% national pass rate. But I'm hoping that, this ongoing class will be successful, and we would be we know that we have 1 week student in that class. So we are doing a lot of effort by adding, we have added capstone to be started on the 5th week of term 4. We already had students start ATI board vitals, and there will be a live NCLEX review after the completion of term 4, and then there will be ATI predictor exit exam 1 and 2 for this ongoing class. So I wonder if the issue putting us on provisional status would be the right time at this time. I thought that it would be premature to put us on provisional status. That's just my question.
Ms. Silverman, did you want to respond to that, or do the boards have any further question?
My recommendation was that they needed to be closely monitored with 79 points below. And even if both of these other students do pass, which we obviously don't have statistics if they're not going to take until August, they're still going to be negative 40 point. They're still going to be way below the 10%. I truly believe that they need very close monitoring. And if these two pass, then the board would have the opportunity to discuss if they would like to give them a third class prior to that second class go and test for NCLEX. She is always willing, she's always able to request a class, and I would always write a report with my recommendations, either positive or negative, and it would come to the board at that point. So if she was put on provisional in August, in November, she could then ask for another class to start if these two students had passed prior to the second class completing their testing.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there further comments from the public?
Committee Chair, I do not see any at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there further comments from the board? Do I have a motion from the board?
Right, Cheryl Turner, I move that we accept the NEC's report with the exception of and deleting item 6 and refer it to the board. Is that correct?
Was it number 6 or number 7, Ms. Turner?
Okay, let me look at it again. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the last school. Thank you for asking me that. Number 7.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Any discussion from the public? All right. We call for a vote. Ms. Amazola de Herrera.
Yes.
Ms. Norton.
Yes.
Ms. Turner.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right. Agenda item suggestions for future agenda items.
Oh, yeah.
We've already had some suggestions. Do those need to be repeated, Mr. Swenson?
No, they do not.
Are there further suggestions from the board?
I think that there should be some type of closed session discussion regarding litigation.
That is being planned for the next regular board meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Are there further suggestions from the public?
At this time, I don't see any hands raised and no further comment.
Thank you, moderator.
This
You're
is
welcome.
Paula Amazola. I would like to encourage the staff as we move forward with new topics that if a agenda item has been on an ongoing process, such as the agenda item with the 2 years versus 1 year, that we get some historical perspective during the meetings and maybe even in closed communications that happen. And in this way, as we review the material, that we are able to ensure that we have that history of when certain communication came out and know and be able to access that. So that's my suggestion, so that we can move more speedy through our meetings and have the full picture.
Thank you.
And I have another item, and it may overlap the litigation issue, but to be able to follow up on our communication with the letters, the distinction between the board members versus the BVNPT board, needs to really be clear. But again, I don't know if that falls under that litigation issue or if that's a separate issue.
Thank you. I think it's probably a separate issue.
Okay.
Are there any further comments from the board or from the public?
I do not see any further comments from the public.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Then we will adjourn this meeting as of 5:02 p.m. Thank you all for attending. The meeting is adjourned.